Alright guys, welcome back to the next cooking tutorial. Today I'm going to be pan frying and then steaming some pork chops. So just like with any other meat that I ever cook with in a pan, if I'm going to pan fry it, I've let these set out for about 10 minutes now. And so then, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to oil my pan and I'm going to turn the heat on. So you just want to cover the bottom. You just want to cover the entire bottom of the pan. You don't really want to get much more than that because we're not deep frying these, we're shallow frying them. Turn that on to a high heat. Make sure it gets nice and hot so you can get that oil up there so that your pork chops will cook nice and good. Then, like, you get out your salt and your pepper or whatever else you want to season your pork chops with. And then we're just going to be very gracious with the amount of seasoning we put on here. So don't be scared to be a little bit generous with your seasoning. Smash it down with your hand to make sure it sticks into the pork chop so that whenever you flip it over, it all doesn't just fall off. Back onto your board, flip them over, season the other side. Smash those down. Just wipe it off your hand a little bit. All right. I'm going to try and feel the heat of the pan by hovering my hand over it to see how hot it is. I don't think that's quite hot enough. So while that keeps going, I'm going to put my seasoning away. And while that's happening, I'm going to whoopsie me, I forgot to make sure I had a clean pair of tongs, but I'll just use a fork. So if you don't have a pair of tongs, you can always use a fork or like a big long fork that you can stick into the pork chop and set it down like that. Just gotta be careful. You have more risk of burning yourself a little bit by doing it like that. So a tongs or any other kind of object that you could pick up the pork chop with without having to get close like that is always best. So yeah, I'd say that's hot enough now. So what I'm gonna stab it with my fork. There is a crackling and a bubbling from the oil. It's not as fierce as I would like it to be, but that tells me that the oil is more or less ready. So I'm gonna take my other one, and remember, whenever you're laying something into oil, you always want to make sure you lay it away from you to keep from splashing yourself. That's the most important part of laying stuff into the pan to keep from hurting yourself, is lay it away. I'm gonna dump any excess seasoning into the pan along with the stuff. Wipe off my cooking station. And now we're just gonna wait for them to cook. Since I'm gonna be steaming these after I've pan fried them for a little bit, it's probably no more than 2 minutes on either side. So now we just wait. So it's been about 2 minutes now. I'm gonna move it around a little bit, skewer it with my fork, and flip it over. Do the same with the other one. And those look pretty good right now. Alright, so now that I flipped them over, I'm going to add some butter to my pan to give it a little extra, give it a little bit more extra flavor. This part's a little bit fun because this butter is really going to crackle as soon as I drop it in here. And I just like to add 1 scoop of butter for each thing that's in the pan. So since there's 2 pork chops, I'm adding 2 scoops of butter. And now once that butter melts, then I'll start basting. Smells good. Move these around to get them closer to each other. Now, just like any time when you baste, you tilt the pan towards you to get the juices to come down towards you. You spoon them back on to the top to reincorporate all the juiciness and the flavor. It makes them way more tender and it makes them taste way better. I'm just gonna put about a spoonful of the good juice back on to each one about 10 times. 5 to 10 times is really all you need, unless you really want to reincorporate it. Now I'm going to flip them back over. Come on, hold on. Now I'm going to baste them again to get the other side, because I don't want to ignore the other side. Alright, so now here comes the fun part. So if you're like me, chances are you over-season everything. And so one great way that you can cut out all of the seasoning is by pouring water over it. So first thing I'm going to do is that since there's oil in this pan, the oil and the water are going to react with each other and it's going to create some wild stuff, so you guys get to listen to that for 1 second. So while that's freaking out, you can always do a little bit of cleanup. So since I don't need the butter or the spoon anymore, I'm just going to put those away. Then I'm going to dump the rest of my water in. Throw the bottle of water away. Then, now I'm going to turn my heat down to about half. And then I'm just going to pop a lid on this thing. And I'm going to let those boil and steam for a little while. So. pouring the water on top of whatever you're cooking will remove any salt that may or may not be stuck to it in case you salted them too much. You can use it to cut any kind of, if you put too much like spice or too much chili inside of it, you can pour water on top of it, and that can reduce it down a little bit to make those spice flavors not as strong to the point where it's not like completely uneatable. So that if you're ever worried that you may have put too much seasoning on something, like too much salt, then you can always try steaming it or boiling it like I'm doing now. I've only ever tried this with meats, but you can probably do it with other things as well. The kitchen, it's your kitchen. Experiment how you want to. Ooh, look at that. Very nice. Alright, so now I'm going to turn the heat off, wait till the boiling stops, move these around just a little bit. Pick them up, shake them off, set them back down onto your board. And now I'm just going to let these rest for a little bit to let them cool off. But this right here is how I like to make pork chops when I'm pan frying them, of course.